we're back again. It's the Horror Guys with episode 119.
119 big ones.
I'm Kevin.
I'm Brian.
And we're here to talk about some horror movies.
And sort of copying last week, we got 4 Vincent Price movies for you this week.
The 60s was a busy time for Vincent Price.
It was.
He did a lot of movies then, yeah. And, yeah, we're going to talk about
most
them.
of his movies were probably in the 60s.
It was heavily concentrated then.
Yeah, he did some in the 50s and I think even the 40s. But
well, and after that, too. But, yeah.
Well, in the 70s, I think he was more
the
into comedy
age
and variety shows and
the
stuff.
golden age of Vincent Price horror.
Seems to be, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we've got our usual short film that we'll talk about a little later. But before we get started...
What else do we have?
Books.
Oh, really?
Check out horrorguys.com/books for our various books. As usual, we've got the Horror Guys Guide to the Universal Studios Shock Theater, the Horror Guys Guide to Universal Studios Son of Shock, the Horror Guys Guide to Hammer Horror Films, and of course a sextet of strange stagings, 6 surprising scripts, Tales to Make You Shiver Volume 1, Tales to Make You Shiver Volume 2, and there's a new one.
We have got so many books.
Yeah,
so
and more all
cool.
the time. We've got a brand new one this week. The Horror Guys Guide to the Silent Age of Horror. We tell you about it, but it's silent.
There, we just told you about it.
Yeah, it talks about a little bit over 30 of the most influential silent horror movies.
Back in the day when everybody was doing all this stuff for the first time.
Yeah. We've talked about Nosferatu and the Golem and Cabinet of Dr. Caligari here, but there are a lot more that we haven't talked about. And you can pick those up with the Silent Age of Horror at horrorguys.com/books. But
That would have been interesting in those days. You know, how do you make a person disappear on film? Well, I don't know. Nobody's ever done it before. Let's figure out how to do it.
Yeah, I didn't realize until I got started with this project, they had color film in 1902.
Just expensive and impractical.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Very.
Yeah.
Hand-painted film. Seriously.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Tedious. That would be tedious work.
Yeah, it would. That was it. 24 frames per second times however long.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. Well, this time we've got some movies for you. What do we got?
We got The Last Man on Earth, and we got The Masque of the Red Death, and we got The Tomb of Ligeia, and we got Witchfinder General.
Cool.
And a short called Double Edged.
Double Edged?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Let's do that first.
Okay.
This one is
Twinsies.
Double Edged from 2020, directed and written by Cleona Kinsetta. Stars Cynthia Crowfoot, Katie Douglas, and Elisa Ehrlich. 16 minutes long. And okay, did we like this?
I liked it. I thought it was intriguing. Was there really twins, or was it all in everybody's head?
Exactly. It's a little confusing.
Uh-huh.
Well, Evelyn writes a letter to her mother. The furniture's all covered up in this house. We see her cleaning the house, but she says she hasn't seen the ghost yet, and she's been there 13 days. What?
What?
We flash back to Evelyn and Samantha doing a spelling bee kind of thing for their mother. Evelyn gets a word wrong, so Mother locks her in a trunk. For winning, the mother gives Samantha her grandmother's gown. Clearly, the mother prefers Samantha over Evelyn.
Even though they're identical twins, apparently.
Evelyn talks...
Or are they?
Yeah. Evelyn talks to her dead sister through the mirror. Evelyn puts on the gown, and the ghost throws her outside. She can't be Samantha, she says to herself. Evelyn really misses Samantha, whose ghost tells her to run, leave. And then mother and daughter have it out after Mother shoots her. Evelyn dies, and Mother wraps up the body. But that may not be the end of the story. Ooh.
Yeah, I thought this was very interesting how it was done.
It's not always clear in this one which girl is which, or why the mother prefers one over the other. And I think it's intentionally vague.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think so.
The mother kills the second daughter in order to have her lead the first daughter into the light. Well,
maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's well acted and looks good, but it really doesn't make a lot of sense.
It leaves you thinking and wondering. Yeah,
what
I thought it was
hell
really well
that?
done. Yeah, exactly. yeah, and
Yeah.
creepy, and
Double-edged
all
from
the good stuff.
2020.
Yeah, you should check it out.
All right, which takes us to our quadrilogy of Vincent Price. There's 4 of them this week.
Quadrilogy.
Well, they're not really related, but there's 4 of them, so we got a
didn't-
whole bunch of them.
We didn't watch them all in one setting. It wasn't really a quadrilogy. A slow quadrilogy.
All right.
Anyway.
Well, 3 of these 4 were all made in the same year.
Yeah.
So he was busy.
He had a busy time, yeah.
Yeah, let's start with The Last Man on Earth, 1964.
And you may have seen other versions of this as The Omega Man
I Am Legend.
and I Am Legend.
Yeah.
Yeah, Will Smith and the Charlton Heston movies.
This one was first.
All based on the same book.
Yes.
Yeah, the book was The Last Man on Earth. No, the book was
I think I Am Legend
I Am
was
Legend
this.
was the book. Yeah.
Yeah, well, this one's 64, Last Man on Earth. It was black and white, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was.
Directed by Ubaldo Ragona and Sidney Salco. Written by Richard Matheson. He did the original story there. And William Leicester. Stars Vincent Price, Franca Betoya, and Emma Daniele. And if you didn't notice that's 3 people in the cast list, so he's probably not really the last man on Earth.
Yeah, not really.
Runtime 1 hour 26 minutes.
And actually, you find out there's lots of men on Earth still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you like it?
Yeah, I still did.
Well, you've
Yeah.
seen the Omega Man. You've seen the the other one, I Am Legend.
Actually, Omega Man is my favorite of them, of the ones I've seen.
Okay.
Isn't there another one floating out there somewhere that they did? I don't know.
I don't think
I've
so.
seen those 3.
Not that
anyway.
not that
And
I
of,
remember.
Of the 3, I like the Omega Man the best.
Okay, we need to see that again pretty soon because I don't remember it being terribly good.
Oh, okay. Well, Charlton Heston was what's not to like.
Get your hands off me, you damn dirty vampires.
Yeah.
Wait,
there you
wrong
go.
movie.
He should have just said that in
Every movie,
Some
yes.
variation of it.
All right. Yeah, well, you didn't care for the Will Smith one.
The least.
Yeah,
I mean, I didn't dislike
tend to
it.
agree with you, yeah.
But I would put them in that order.
It was an
Omega Man,
okay
this one.
action movie.
Yeah, it was more action-y. But, yeah,
I kind of lean toward this one. I like this one.
okay.
It's definitely the simplest and most low budget of the bunch. All right, well, we begin with many shots of empty streets and abandoned buildings. There are dead people in the streets just laying out in the open. Dr. Robert Morgan wakes up, and he is the last man on Earth. It's December 1965, 3 years after the plague hit. You do remember the Great Plague of 62, right?
Oh, sure, yeah.
He goes out to this was in the future. He goes out to the garage to refill his generators and finds a few dead bodies right outside his door. We see that he has crosses and garlic nailed to his front door, which is strange. He fires up the ham radio, makes coffee, and checks out his food stores. He kind of looks like the ultimate prepper. I've got to find where they hide in the day, he mutters. There's more than half the city he hasn't searched.
Yeah, there's muttering and voiceovering, so that helps us out with knowing.
Well, there's nobody for him
what
to
has,
talk to. So
what has happened so far and what's going on.
Yeah. He turns his own vampire-killing steaks on his lathe. He makes them himself out of table legs. Those are some nice-looking vampire steaks.
They
He's
are.
very precise.
He's good at this by now.
He packs up his steaks and goes hunting. Morgan dumps the dead bodies in a pit and burns them. Then he finds some live ones, and he drives stakes through their hearts just like any other vampire. He explains that most of his days are some variation of this. Morgan then goes to the crypt where his dead wife is buried. He goes to sleep there, and when he wakes up, it's already dark. Sloppy.
Yep. He should be better at this by now.
He should be.
But he's, I think, been doing it so long, he's getting tired of it and sloppy. And, yeah.
Intentionally lazy, yeah.
Yeah.
He fights off some vampires heading to the car. Fortunately, they're slow-moving like zombies, and he gets past them pretty quickly. Morgan fights his way into the house, past one zombie that keeps calling his name. Morgan. Morgan does eventually get home without too much risk. We then get a flashback of Morgan's daughter, Kathy's birthday party. She's having her birthday party back in the past, back when they were alive.
The pre-plague days.
Yeah. Virginia is there, and so is Ben, who we recognize as one of the zombies who still hangs around Morgan's house today. The adults talk about the new plague and how it doesn't behave like a normal disease. We then fast forward a bit to see both Virginia and Kathy are sick. Uh-oh. And things progress badly from there. Morgan forbids Virginia from calling a doctor for Kathy. That would be a disaster. Why wouldn't you call a doctor?
Because this isn't a normal disease.
No, they don't just give you some medicine and go away. Morgan goes to work, but there's no one left to research the disease. When he returns home, they're loading Kathy's corpse into a truck. Virginia relented and called the doctor, and they took her away. When Virginia finally dies, he buries her out in the field. That night, she comes to his door and whispers, "Let me in."
She's not really dead.
Well,
she is
maybe.
Dead. She is, but she's not. Yeah.
It's not a normal plague.
No.
The next morning, Morgan
So
spots
there's somewhere between zombie and vampire in this.
yeah.
You know, kind of a mishmash.
Yeah, they're slow moving, but they're kind of intelligent. They're not completely stupid zombies.
It doesn't completely wipe them out. Yeah.
The next morning, Morgan spots a dog, a live dog, which apparently is a very rare thing. They must get the plague too.
Mm-hmm.
He chases it and finds bodies that have been staked, but not by him.
Metal stakes.
There's another hunter out there somewhere.
Hot diggity.
Between the dog and the excitement about the new hunter, Morgan starts getting hopeful. He examines the dog's blood, and it's infected too. He buries it the next morning. As he buries the dog, he sees a woman walking outside in the daylight. He takes her home with him, and her name is Ruth. She seems normal enough, but she cringes away from the garlic. He thinks she must be infected, but she says she's just in shock.
And doesn't like garlic.
Morgan explains that he was once bitten on the neck by a bat in Panama, and he thinks that may have given him immunity. Wait, you can get immunity from bats? I thought bats only started plagues.
Depends on the plague.
Okay. Ruth is taking an injection that keeps her from changing. "There are quite a number of us," she says. Her group wants to rebuild society, but they see Morgan as a murdering monster. "You are a legend in the city, leading bloodless corpses behind you. Many of those people you staked were still alive," she says. Oops.
So she's one of the new civilization.
Her people are coming after him tonight to kill him. She was sent as a distraction. She passes out, and Morgan does a blood transfusion between the two of them. When she wakes up, she's actually really cured. His blood is the cure.
Awesome.
Of course, this is the time when Ben decides to break in the front door and grabs Ruth. They've been beating on his door for 3 years, and tonight's the
Finally,
night. Tonight's the night.
Mm-hmm.
Many men with guns drive up and kill all the vampires in the area, including Ben. The men spot Morgan and chase him through the neighborhood. They trade gunfire, and Morgan goes to the police armory, where he gets bigger guns. He gets shot and staggers into a church, where he finally dies. Ruth tells the others, "We're all safe now." The cure we didn't need.
Because he is legend.
He is now, yeah. Well, I like that it spent so much time on his equipment at home, where he gets the gas and food, the details of his survival as the only human in town. The lighting and direction here are very much like Night of the Living Dead, which came out a few years after this one, but was obviously influenced by this. The slow-moving zombies, the black and white creepiness, the fact that the zombies can sort of talk.
Yeah. Night of the Living Zombies.
There's a 3 years difference. This has been remade twice, but I think this is the best of the three.
Okay. It was good. I don't question it was good. I like Omega Man better.
Okay.
Yeah.
A little more action in Omega Man. This is much more talking and thinking, I think.
More cerebral.
Definitely, yeah.
More science in it.
Speaking of cerebral, we got the Masque of the Red Death from 1964 next.
The Skittles of Death.
Oh, yeah, the finale. Yeah. Directed by Roger Corman, written by Charles Beaumont and R. Wright Campbell, stars Vincent Price, Hazel Court, Jane Asher, hour 29 minutes. Link in the show notes if you haven't picked this one up. What'd you think? You like it?
Yeah, I did.
I remember this one was on fairly often Saturday nights on the horror shows on weekends.
Yeah, I saw it.
And I didn't like it when I was little because there's no monsters.
In the 70s, I think
There's
I saw
no
it.
real action.
Yeah.
I
liked it definitely better now than
as a 12-year-old. This one just bored the crap out of me.
Yeah, I don't remember liking it then, but yeah, watching it this time,
I like it better
pretty
now.
good. Yeah.
It's still a little on the boring side.
It's low action.
It's very low action, yeah.
It's a mishmash of Poe tales, and yeah.
But I do like it better. I would definitely recommend watching it if you like Price and Poe.
And costume dramas. Lots of
A lot of costumes in this,
Yeah,
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, if you're into costumes and period stuff, yeah.
Yeah. Well, an old woman gathers sticks and comes upon a man in a red cloak. He takes a white rose and turns it red and tells her to take it to town. All right, well, the bloom was off that rose.
Yeah.
Prince Prospero rides into town, narrowly avoiding running over a child playing on the road. Go away, kid. He has come to claim his taxes for the year. The man in red promised deliverance from Prospero's tyranny, and that old woman is there, and she has the plague, the Red Death. He takes Francesca, her father and boyfriend, and then orders the village to be burned to the ground. Because if you can't pay all your taxes, next year you don't have to pay taxes. There'll be nothing left.
That's right.
Prospero orders that all his noble friends gather there at the castle for safety from the Red Death plague, but to hurry and be sure to avoid the village. Before long, the party begins. Alfredo knocks out the little dancing girl after she bumps his drink. There will be a masquerade on Sunday, but Prospero forbids anyone to wear red. He explains about the Red Death and how it's ravaging the countryside. Then he picks on his guests, making one pretend to be a pig and another pretend to be a worm.
Yeah, it's quite a party. Yeah,
He's very degrading and humiliating, but the guests seem to love it.
Yeah, they were having a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great party.
And Alfredo looks like the kind of man who holds a grudge. And Alfredo is, what's his, Patrick McGee. A couple of times I've called him the discount Boris Karloff.
Yeah.
He resembles him and he kind of talks like him. Yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
Francesca wakes up and hears Prospero chanting somewhere. She follows the voice and finds Prospero asleep in a hidden room. She screams and runs away. Francesca and Prospero talk about God and Satan and falcons the next morning. Prospero and Juliana are hardcore Satanists. Gino, Francesca's boyfriend, is forced to learn to fight with a sword. So there's lots of stuff happening.
Lots of action, lots of stuff.
And then we meet Hop Toad. There's a cool name.
Yes.
Hop Toad is the court dwarf, because every court needs one. He suggests to Alfredo that he come to the masquerade in a gorilla suit. Meanwhile, Juliana gives her soul to Satan and waits to become immortal with the next ritual. But she gives Francesca the key to the cell doors to let her family go. She goes down to the dungeon, frees the men, and heads to the guard, who is supposed to have been bribed. The guard is not there, but Prospero is waiting for them.
Whoops.
Uh-oh.
Whoopsies.
The next day, Gino and Ludovico, his father, must cut themselves with daggers, one of which is poisoned. There's like 8 knives, one of them's poisoned, and they have to take turns cutting themselves. And so in front of all the guests, they cut their forearms one after the other, until there's one knife left.
That must be the poison one, right?
Prospero ends up stabbing Ludovico. Gino was released to the infected village. Gino runs through the woods and meets the man in the red cloak. Uh-oh. Juliana does another ritual and has a psychedelic dream. Then she goes into the big hall, and the falcon rips her to pieces. Oops. The final 6 survivors of the villagers come to the castle, and Prospero has them all shot. In the middle of the ballroom, Hop Toad pours brandy all over Alfredo in the monkey suit and sets him on fire. Prospero is like, "This is the best party ever,"
yeah.
as the smoke clears. You'd think he'd be a little angry because they set his best friend on fire, but no, he's like, "That was cool."
Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah.
Prospero follows a man wearing red to the ball and follows him to a private room. Prospero calls him the Prince of Darkness. The time of unmasking, where they begin to show their naked faces, says the man in red. And I looked, and you looked, and we both looked to see if this was Christopher Lee under that mask.
It was not.
It was not,
No.
but it sure sounded like it.
It's an uncredited role.
Yeah, he's a real actor.
John Westbrook.
There you go, right.
Yeah. He had a role in Tomb of Ligeia,
Which we're going to talk about later.
Talk about soon. Yeah.
Yeah, but
he's uncredited.
I could have sworn
in
it
this
was
as
Christopher
the red
Lee's
guy.
voice, though. He sounds just like him.
Yeah, very much so.
The time of unmasking, where they begin to show their naked faces, says the man in red. He moves among the crowd, and each of them turns red with the plague. The red man says Francesca upstairs to leave the party. Red corrects Prospero. Satan is not my master. Death has no master. Your pact with him won't save you. Oops.
Oopsie.
Prospero pulls off the man's mask and sees his own face inside. Everyone at the party turns red and collapses dead. The man in red chases Prospero, but he can't get away. Prospero dies last. Well, then we get a little epilogue scene where the Black Death walks up and says hi to the red, yellow, and white deaths.
Death is a rainbow.
Yellow, blue, and green join them silently. It's like the Power Rangers from hell. The seven colors of death.
They're all death personified in different forms.
The seven colors of death march off together in a row like the seven Skittles of doom. Mm-hmm. And they explain the Black Death is, of course, the bubonic plague. The Red Death is this thing. Yellow was cholera or something like that. Each of the colors signify something. Well, this looks really good. It has great costumes and scenery. The acting is fine, but not much really happens. It has a few genuinely creepy moments and some great scenes, but overall it's just kind of a boring story. It's about some people who hide from the plague in a castle and die at the end.
Well, that's what it summarizes to.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, that's the summary.
How much excitement do you get hiding in a castle?
Well, that's the Poe story,
Yeah. Of all the Price, Corman, Poe films, this is the least funny, and, at least in my opinion, probably the least fun to watch.
It was good. It was good. I liked it. I give it a thumbs up.
I give it a thumbs up, but a weak one.
A qualified thumbs up. Okay.
I don't think Vincent Price did any bad movies in the 60s. They're all worth watching.
Yeah.
Some are definitely better than others.
Yes.
What'd you think of The Tomb of Ligeia from 1964?
It was okay.
Okay.
I liked it better the second time through.
All right. Yeah, we saw this at a horror festival 3 or 4 years ago. 5 or 6, how many years ago? A while back. And I'm sure this one's one of those ones that they showed on TV pretty regularly. So yeah, I've seen this several times. I like it.
Yeah. It was worth a watch.
Directed by Roger Corman, written by Robert Towne, stars Vincent Price, Elizabeth Shepard, and John Westbrook, who was that voice that we just talked about. Hour and 22 minutes, link in the show notes if you need to pick one up. And again, The Last Man on Earth, The Masque of the Red Death, and The Tomb of Ligeia were all made the same year.
Busy year for Vincent Price.
Busy year, yeah. 2 of these were Corman Poe type movies, and the Last Man on Earth, that was unrelated. So, Tomb of Ligeia, you kind of sort of liked it.
Yeah,
you
kind of.
You don't sound terribly enthusiastic.
Oh, it was all right. It was okay. It was
Okay.
pretty good. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you cannot bury her in consecrated ground, shouts the preacher. She will lay in my ground, says Verdun Fell. I will her not to die, he says. They argue, and a cat jumps on the coffin, making the dead woman open her eyes. Because there's a little glass window in the coffin, you see her face.
All coffins need a little glass window.
It'd be a whole lot less let me out drama. Well, the priest leaves in anger, and we see that the woman is Ligea, and she's being buried in this tomb. Credits roll. All right, well, we return in the middle of a fox hunt. Rowena and Christopher break away from the pack to explore a ruined abbey. It's a big old place with crumbling stone walls, a huge number of graves, and the Tomb of Ligeia, still guarded by that damn cat.
Very cool set.
It is, yeah. The cat scares the horse, which throws Rowena to the ground. She looks up and spots Verdun Fell, who scares the crap out of her. She's like, ah! I mean, he's not scary, he's just there.
No, he's just there, yeah. He's well-dressed. A well-dressed gentleman.
Verdun wears funky sunglasses since he has a bad reaction to sunlight. He carries Rowena home to mend her hurt leg. He has a gigantic house right next to the cemetery. Rowena's father, Lord Trevanion, comes in with a dead fox, but the fox soon goes missing. Rowena's foot turns out to be fine, so they all leave Verdun alone. The next day, Rowena finds an excuse to visit Verdun. He attacks her until he gets a good look at her. Never, never come here unannounced. He gives her a good scare. He's afraid of some woman who will arrive unannounced someday. They argue, but they're clearly attracted to one another. They're about to kiss when the cat attacks again and claws Rowena. Just then, Christopher arrives. I think I'd get rid of that cat.
I think I would at that point, too.
When they start attacking everybody.
Yeah.
Verdun's house is filled with Egyptian artwork and relics. He explains to Christopher that most of them are copies. Rowena asks Kendrick the butler about Ligea, but he won't say anything on the topic. Verdun and Christopher go out to see the tomb, and the date of her death has been cut off, which is a real trick with marble. He thinks that it's a sign of Ligea's return. Rowena follows the black cat to retrieve Verdun's sunglasses, and she climbs all the way up to the top of the bell tower. The bell starts to ring, and the men have to rescue Rowena, because women are scared of loud noises.
It's amazing how much she looks like the Lady Ligea.
She's not the same actress.
Yeah, it's the same actress.
Is she?
Yeah, Elizabeth Shepard played both roles.
Oh.
That's why she looks so much alike. I was being funny.
I didn't catch it.
Yeah.
I didn't think they looked that much alike. Okay, so one thing leads to another, and Rowena and Verdun get married. That did escalate quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Verdun then decides to put the abbey up for sale. He's had enough of this crap. Christopher, a lawyer, points out that there was never a death certificate for Ligea, but the abbey is in her name, which is really kind of stupid because she's buried in a coffin with a glass window.
Yeah?
Yeah, she's in there.
Yeah.
He can't be rid of the place until the problem is solved. The status of his marriage to Rowena is also in question. If his first wife isn't dead, well, he's not married to the second
he can't
wife.
Be remarried, yeah.
They have a little dinner party, and the conversation turns to hypnosis, as so often happens at dinner parties.
It was a different time.
Yeah, I guess. They set up a demonstration. Rowena's mother died when she was 3, so he hypnotizes her and asks her questions about her nearly unknown mother. She remembers a lot under hypnosis, but then her voice changes, and she starts talking in Ligea's voice. That night, Rowena dreams of the dead fox, the cat, the dungeon, and Ligea. When she wakes up, the dead fox is on her chest, which is good for another scream. It's like waking up with a horse's head.
Ew.
When she goes back, it's gone. Rowena comes to the conclusion that Ligea is alive somewhere in the abbey.
Sorta.
Christopher comes looking for Verdun, but he's not home, and Kendrick won't tell them where he is. He also won't tell where Ligea is. He doesn't insist that she's dead, which is odd. Christopher orders the tomb to be dug up. Meanwhile, Rowena is locked in her bedroom with the evil cat, who screams and flies all over the place. This is
That
really
darn
the
cat.
cat from hell.
Yes, it is.
She breaks a mirror.
Cat's
and...
on the poster.
Yeah. The cat is the big villain here.
Yeah.
She breaks a mirror and finds a passage to the other side. Christopher finds the woman in the tomb is made of wax, and Rowena finds Verdun's inner sanctum, along with a bed containing Ligea's corpse.
So she is dead.
But in the house.
Right.
Christopher and Kendrick come in and explain that Ligea has done this to Verdun. She controls him from beyond the grave. Rowena pretends to be Ligea and uses the hypnosis commands to release him. Then she falls down dead. Verdun snaps out of it. Finally, he snaps out. He picks up Ligea's corpse and throws her into the fire. He then picks up Rowena and puts her in Ligea's bed. Then Ligea walks in and kills, and the two fight. And he kills her again, but it turns out that he really killed Rowena. He can't tell the difference. Or he's hallucinating, whichever. Verdon then decides to kill the cat, so he chases it all over the room. The cat claws his eyes out. Wow.
This is some cat.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then he accidentally sets the house on fire.
As so often happens in these kind of movies.
Well, the clawing your eyes out, that's a new twist. But yeah, then the roof collapses on everybody, and outside Rowena wakes up not really dead. The end. The end was a little abrupt.
It was, yeah.
Yes. We need to wrap this thing up. Well, let's have the cat attack him and set the house on fire.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like they painted themselves into a corner with it, because it kind of went on, and exactly. Like, how can we end it? Oh, yeah. Here's how. We'll just stop.
We'd use that cat.
Yeah.
Well, Roger Corman said this was the biggest and the most exciting of his Poe films. It's also the last of the series. The setting, Castle Acre Priory in Norfolk, UK, is perfect for this.
It's a real place. You can still visit today.
It's expansive, ancient, and creepy, and the actors are hardly even needed beyond just the scenes. There's little or no humor here, and it's all pretty serious. This has got to be the meanest cat ever put on film.
Yes.
And this is probably the best of the Price-Corman-Poe collaborations, I think. Probably because it's the most serious. But you don't think so?
Yeah. It was all right.
It was all right.
It was okay.
All right, I liked it.
I liked it okay. It was all right.
Which takes us to Witchfinder General from 1968, a couple years later.
Which I liked a lot better.
I did too. And this is not a Corman film. This is not a tongue-in-cheek funny film.
Not at all.
This is kind of a straight-up historical horror thing.
I'm looking at a poster that says, "Leave the children home, and if you are squeamish, stay home with them."
Well, I think at this point
warned.
he had gotten kind of, Price had kind of gotten a little maybe typecast as being comedy/horror.
This wasn't comedy.
The Raven and the Tales of Terror.
This was some pretty grim work.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
This is straight-up horror.
Yeah.
1968, so this one is a couple years after the others. Directed by Michael Reeves, written by Tom Baker and Michael Reeves. Stars Vincent Price, Ian Ogilvy, and Rupert Davies, hour and 26 minutes. Also marketed as The Conqueror Worm.
To this day, it is unrated. It doesn't have the PGR anything.
It's got a sex scene.
It's
got a lot of gore.
It's got a lot of gore. It's got some... The sex isn't that graphic, but it's there. It's brutal. There's some rapes and rapes and assaults and murders and
I could see somebody taking the kids to see like Raven or something, and then going to this afterwards.
It's got a lot of stuff in it. It's not super graphic. Well,
I think this is probably the most graphic film Vincent Price made.
Yeah, it is a couple points pretty graphic.
I mean, it's not The Exorcist, but for 1968, it pretty intense.
Yeah. So it's not rated R even. It's unrated.
Well, I'm sure of all these movies that they used to show Saturday nights on the horror shows on TV, this wasn't one of them.
No, and if it was, they cut it all to pieces.
I don't remember seeing this before.
I didn't, no.
I won't swear that I haven't.
I had never seen it.
It's been a long time. Well, a gang of villagers, accompanied by a priest, drag an old woman through the streets while we cut to a man building a scaffold. She screams a lot until they kick the stool out from under her. Then all the villagers walk back home and the credits roll. Hang that witch.
They did.
The year is 1645. The law doesn't exist in these troubled times, we're told. Matthew Hopkins preys upon the superstitious countryside, while a group of Cromwell's Roundheads stop to rest the horses, and royalist snipers attack them. Robert Marshall is told to stay with the horses, but they quickly take care of the royalists. The next day, Marshall takes his leave and returns home, to the town that hung the witch in the pre-credit sequence. Sarah's uncle has agreed to let Richard marry his niece if he will take her away from this terrible town, and they have sex that night to celebrate. So they got engaged and have sex. I don't think that was the usual order of things in 1645.
They were progressive.
Yeah. They're going to pay. The next day, Matthew Hopkins and his torturing assistant, John Stern, are coming to town. Stern jokes that Hopkins makes the king's gold for every witch they kill. And which, a couple of times we see Hopkins do the whole witch trial thing.
Yeah.
And then he comes out of the magistrate's office holding a little sack of gold.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he was paid by the king, but it seems counterproductive for the magistrate to be turning in his own people and paying the executioner to come and kill them. Why wouldn't you keep your mouth shut and keep the money?
You could, couldn't you?
You could.
Yeah. King would never know.
I mean, it's like the town's tax money or wherever that money comes from.
Uh-huh.
If they didn't have all these witches, they could keep the money for the local community.
Yeah.
It seems much more likely that the Witchfinder General would be paid directly from the king, not the villagers themselves.
Yeah.
So
There'd be too much corruption where they'd keep the money.
But then there would have to be scenes where we see him getting the money from the king. And this way here it makes it obvious he's doing it for the money.
Yes.
So, yeah, probably not real historically accurate. Okay, so anyway, they come for Sarah's uncle, the village priest, who denies everything. Stern tortures him, stabbing him repeatedly because that's a test of Satan's men. What is it? If you don't bleed, you're a Satan? What? I didn't quite catch the logic on that one.
If you don't bleed or cry out, that means that...
Satan is with you or against you?
It's complicated, yes,
Yeah.
because they can kind of argue it either way.
Well, yeah, a lot of that stuff could be argued either way.
Yeah.
Hopkins questions Sarah and hints that she might sway him of her uncle's innocence tonight in her bedroom.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah, wink, wink.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to find the truth, one shirt button at a time.
Yeah, so if we have a special session, I'm sure we can discuss this.
Hopkins drags his feet on Uncle John to get Sarah where he wants her. Stern follows Hopkins that night and sees that Hopkins is boinking Sarah in his off hours. That's the word they use in 1645. Boinking,
yep.
I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Hopkins goes to visit the neighboring town in the morning on business, and Stern rapes Sarah, but someone tells on him when Hopkins returns. Now that Sarah isn't pure, Hopkins gives it up and orders that Uncle John should be tortured until he confesses, which does not take long. Turns out there are 3 confessed witches when it's all done. Hopkins ties them up and throws them into the moat. If they drown, they're innocent. If they float, they're witches and will then be hanged. Well, okay then.
But what if they weigh the same as a duck?
Yeah, that's wrong.
They didn't try that.
Yeah, ducks are Satanists too. Well, they lower him into the water, but not all the way, so they survive for hanging, which they do not survive. Hopkins collects his gold, and he and Stern leaves. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Richard Marshall gets the news of what happened to Sarah's uncle and heads straight home to investigate. He meets with Sarah, who tells him everything. Marshall swears vengeance on John's murderers. He soon runs into Stern, and they fight, but Stern gets away. After a high-speed horse chase, Stern gets to Hopkins first. Hopkins isn't afraid. All he has to do is accuse Marshall of being a witch. Marshall gets warned for going AWOL from duty, but then goes back to his unit. Hopkins and Stern run into trouble with some other soldiers, and the 2 men split up. Stern gets shot in the shoulder, and Stern wants revenge on Hopkins for deserting him. Cromwell then orders Marshall to capture the king, who is trying to escape the region. He hears where Hopkins is working and goes straight there instead. Yeah, I wonder what kind of career he had afterwards. AWOL twice.
Not a good one, probably.
Hopkins has upgraded his procedure from hanging witches to burning them. Hopkins and Stern make up, and they spot Sarah in the town they're currently in. Where Sarah is, Marshall will soon come, and then they can get their revenge on him. They set a trap. Hopkins gets the town magistrate to accuse Sarah and Marshall of doing witchcraft. They are arrested. They shoot the husband of the woman who was burned earlier, but before he dies, he tells the Marshall's men what happened. Hopkins and Stern torture Sarah while Marshall is forced to watch. Meanwhile, Marshall's soldiers advance on the tower. Marshall breaks free and takes an axe to Hopkins. The end. Well, that turned tables very quickly.
It did turn tables, and yeah.
I mean, 2 minutes from the end, the villains were winning.
Yeah, there's more to it than that, but yeah. It was,
not a lot.
Well, you're summarizing it. Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of horse riding in this film.
But yeah, I mean, and actually, now that I'm thinking about it, it was more graphic than, yeah.
There's a lot of, well, yeah. This was originally marketed as Edgar Allan Poe's The Conqueror Worm. And, I don't even remember the story from Poe, although it sounds familiar.
I don't either, and I've never read this one.
Yeah.
No.
Vincent Price said this was his best performance in a horror film, and it is a lot more graphic than most of his other films. There's torture, rape, burning, drowning, surgery, revenge, and general mayhem aplenty. There's also nearly zero hamminess from Price, which is kind of a nice change.
Yeah, it's very serious. Yeah.
A lot of this film takes place outdoors in day and nighttime, and the sets and costumes are fascinating. A lot of good costuming in this one.
Yeah.
The feud between Hopkins and Stern is very short-lived and doesn't go anywhere. I mean, they make a big deal about Stern is going to get his revenge. He's going to hunt down Hopkins. He's going to make him pay for deserting him. And then they're like, I had to. Okay.
Okay. All right.
It goes nowhere. They make up way too easily. The story itself was very predictable, because you know what happened historically, but the seriousness and gore raised it above the usual Price films. I thought this was pretty darn good.
Yeah, I did
like
too.
This one.
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, that is our show for this week. Thanks for joining us. Stop in at horrormovieguys.com for news and horror updates. Check out our Facebook group at Horror Movie Guys, or our Twitter account at Horror Movie Guys. Hey, you can even send us email, horrorguysmail@gmail.com.
We love to hear from people.
We do. And next week, we got more movies.
What do we have?
No Vincent Price
No
next
Vincent
week.
Price. We used them all up.
What are we going to have?
We got The Pale Door from 2020, which is a Western horror movie. Western and witches and
we
stuff.
don't get a lot of scary Westerns.
And Area 51
I
from
bet that's not a
2015.
Western.
No, that's Aliens, I bet. Ooh. Yeah. And then we go to hell with Ghost Rider from 2007, and the sequel, Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance from 2011. Yeah. So these are superhero horror movies.
Well, those two are anyway.
Ghost Rider, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Demons and devils and stuff like that.
I remember Ghost Rider being pretty creepy. It's got the devil. It's got some demonic guy in it. And, of course, Ghost Rider himself is pretty cool.
He's demonic, yeah.
Yeah.
Hellfire and all. Yeah.
Have you seen the Spirits of Vengeance yet?
I have not.
No, I haven't seen that one. I didn't even hear that was a
Missed
thing.
it completely.
Missed it, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Saw the original, yeah.
I don't think it came out straight to video, but it wasn't super popular.
Yeah, and they didn't really talk about it.
But we'll talk about that next week. Meanwhile, I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
And we'll see you next week.
See ya.